From the shadows where the whispers grow, through the night where the warriors flow, feel the power in the tales untold. Lord Ninja Choke takes a strong hold.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 25 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. I'm Will, I'm from the UK, and I'm joined by Josh in Australia and Dom in the US. And today we're going to be taking a look at UFC Vancouver, which is headlined by Reinier De Ridder and Brendan Allen. So we've got a 6-fight main card here, and we're going to take a look at all 6 of those fights with our early leans. A little bit of research has been done, a little bit of consideration, thinking about how the fights are going to go down, maybe taking a quick look at the betting line to see how we feel about those early numbers. But yeah, just kind of giving you some early insight before we really head into fight week, just to sort of see where we're at and what we're thinking before we dive deep into the tape and return with our bets in a few days' time. So without further ado, we'll take a look at this main event, which is between Reinier De Ridder and Brendan Allen. It's a main event in the middleweight division. It's 5 rounds. It's a short notice one for Brendan Allen, relatively short notice after Anthony Fluffy Hernandez had to pull out of the bouts. To be fair, Brendan Allen has actually had a fair bit of preparation time for your usual replacement. So I don't think it's going to be like a cardio concern. I don't say short notice for that. But I think he's just in a spot that he isn't supposed to be in, really, basically, is he? I think he's ranked 9th. I don't know how he's ranked 9th. But yeah, it just feels like Brendan Allen has the opportunity to play spoiler here. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one to me, a grappler's delight, I guess you could call it. Josh, do you have any initial thoughts on this fight? How do you see it going down?
Yeah, I don't think Brendan Allen should be really taking this fight. I know that sounds already bad for any Brendan Allen fan that listens to this, but frankly, after losing to De Ridder's original opponent, Hernandez, I do not think that Allen's a great matchup for RDR. RDR's last fight against Whitaker was a absolute heartbreaker, but it also told us a lot about RDR, right? We saw him use his knees up the middle to absolutely decimate the fucking solar plexus of RDR. We have seen him fight so well in those 5 rounds, and I don't think that Allen is able to grit out that kind of fight against RDR in those 5 rounds. The biggest difference here, I reckon, when it comes to stylistic and all that stuff, is RDR's striking. I mean, we did see his striking against who was a Bo Nickel, and we all know that now he has that taste for bringing more Dutch kickboxing to his fights, and I reckon if he employs that same tactic that he used against Whitaker to this one, which is essentially the same fight, really, because Allen is a wrestler and all that stuff. I do think that we're going to see pretty much a copy and paste of what we saw last time when De Ridder fought, in which case De Ridder just blasts the body of Allen and steps that cardio, even though Allen's ready for this fight. I don't know if he's ready for those knees up the middle, right? So I can't help but go with De Ridder here. He's more prepared. He's more deserving of this spot in the main event than Allen is. So, yeah, that's all I got. What about you, Dom?
I think I'm gonna respectfully disagree. I think that Brendan Allen's done a lot more for the UFC than De Ridder in terms of his overall body of work. I know De Ridder's been a recent sensation. He's 4 fights into his UFC career. Let's have a look. I think he's 4-0. In the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he's 4-0 in the UFC, and Brendan Allen has had an incredible number of fights in the UFC for someone who's not even 30 years old, 13-4. And if you look at his UFC record, he's really only losing to the best of the best. I mean, there's no shame in losing to Anthony Hernandez and Nasruddin Imavov. And he's not beating Gans in the UFC. He's taken on the best of the best, right? So I know people say Vittoria's washed, but that was a good win. He's beat Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis is a solid fighter. And, you have to go pretty far back before that because he was on a pretty good run. He beat Punahele Soriano early on. He lost to Chris Curtis And we all remember that was Chris Curtis's first fight in the UFC, I believe. So we didn't know really too much about Chris Curtis, how he would fare at the UFC level. We know he is a UFC caliber fighter, and losing to Sean Strickland, who eventually became champion. So whilst I do understand the love for Reinier De Ridder in this spot, I do feel that Brendan Allen has a good chance to win. I'm not saying that he should be favourite, but at the current odds, which I'll bring up on screen here, we have De Ridder as a nearly -200 favourite, and Brendan Allen approaching +170, 175 in that region. I think this for me is hard to get to a Reinier De Ridder bet if I was going to be placing a bet on this. In terms of a pick, I'm okay if we want to pick RDR. I think I'd rather pick Brendan Allen because, yeah, I just feel like stylistically, RDR does his best work in the clinch and grappling, and Brendan Allen does too. So they kind of like not cancel each other out there, but I think it could be interesting, shall we say, in the scrambles and in the in the grappling. And then when it comes to striking, yes, I think De Ridder has probably better kicks. I think Brendan Allen's boxing is a bit underrated. I think he has decent boxing. He's a bit stiffer, but then I think De Ridder is not the most amazing striker either, and he got knocked down in his last fight by Whittaker. That was a very close fight against Whittaker, and I think you could make a case that Whittaker won that fight, and then we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But overall, I think I can understand De Ridder being the favourite. I think Brendan Allen, he's young, 29 years old. He's a really, really good fighter. I think he's going to show, hopefully, that he's ready for this opportunity because he's a bit hit and miss. But it's his first 5-round fight. It's the only question mark for me. Obviously, we've seen De Ridder go 5 rounds, but it wasn't super convincing in terms of his cardio. So I think Brendan Allen is going to come in very well prepared here. You said it was short notice, but I don't recall like what level of short notice we're talking about. Hopefully he's had a couple of months. If that's the case, that's okay. But if it's any less than that, then that would be a bit of a red flag for me. Will, what are your initial thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I should probably clarify. Short notice was kind of the wrong phrase to use. It's kind of just what we say in MMA, isn't it? When somebody has stepped in, and yeah, but he stepped in when this fight was booked 3 months ago. So he definitely has had at least 6 weeks, I'm going to guess, around that probably. So enough time. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one just because at a glance, when I look at the sort of stock of both men and how I view them in the picture of the UFC rankings, I think that there looks like there's a massive gap between them. But stylistically, I think this is a much trickier fight for Reinier De Ridder than some of the other names around him and closer to him in the rankings would be, because Brendan Allen is very well rounded and his base has always been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's a very good grappler. He's one of the best grapplers in the division. I don't think anyone has ever got the better of him on mat in the grappling department, whereas he has, shown superiority over the likes of Kevin Holland, Christoph Jotko. There are other names that escape me right now, but some very impressive names, and I think he really has shown it. Andre Muniz, Paul Craig, there we go. Finally got my notes up. Yeah, they're two guys who he submitted them as well. It's impressive work from Arnold Allen, Brendan Allen. And Reinier De Ridder, to me, is still a bit of an unknown quantity. He's one of those guys. I think there were quite a lot of comparisons made to Dricus du Plessis in the build-up to his Whittaker fight, not because of the sort of similarities in styles, but every now and again you just find those fighters who, when you watch tape and you think, how are the judges scoring this, or how does it look? It just looks ugly, and he just doesn't it just looks like a walking red flag when he fights. He looks like he's there to be hit. He doesn't look super athletic. He looks timid. He just doesn't give good visuals. But then you look at his record and you look at what he's achieving. And yeah, looks can be deceiving, and I think we all felt that about Dricus du Plessis on his way up to the top of the UFC. We after 1 or 2 fights, you'd think surely this guy's not going all the way, but here we are. And those guys are very hard to analyze, as I'm sure we all know. That it's so hard to look at a fighter and go, I don't think they're that good, and just see them consistently win. You must have to eventually realize that your read is not very good. But yeah, I do think that Brendan Allen should be able to nullify a lot of what De Ridder does best, especially on the mat. I do think the clinch is somewhere that Allen has consistently struggled in his UFC career. If I sort of cast my memory over the times where I think Allen has struggled, I remember the Jacob Malkoon fight where he just sort of positionally didn't have a whole lot of success of getting out of that spot when his opponent wanted to put him there. And I think De Ridder can have success in the clinch and like sort of just firing those knees exactly as we saw against Robert Whittaker. So yeah, overall for me, I do pick Reinier De Ridder just because I think the momentum is on his side and the dangerousness is on his side. But I don't think Arnold Allen, damn it, I said it again. I don't think Brendan Allen is going to get put away in sort of dominant fashion. I think this should be a challenging and competitive fight. Brendan Allen has been 5 rounds before as well, by the way. Early on in his career, I think it was in LFA, he was the champion for a long time before he came over to the UFC. And during that, he fought the likes of Trevin Giles and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Actually, they had a rematch. So their first fight was like a 25-minute scramble fest. It was a really entertaining one. I remember researching it for Anthony Fluffy Hernandez's debut. That's how long I've been doing this. But yeah, Allen should be fine cardio-wise. I don't think he fell apart, if I remember correctly.
He did fight 5 rounds in the UFC. Sorry, he had a main event with Chris Curtis. I was going to correct myself. He went the full 5 with Chris Curtis. Yeah.
Yes, he did.
So yeah, no, I think I'm fine with the De Ridder pick. I didn't do a good enough job of trying to convince you on the Brendan Allen side. I think he's someone that I'm probably going to bet. I haven't bet at the moment. Looks like money's coming in on De Ridder. Yeah, how do you guys think that De Ridder wins this fight then?
I'm leaning towards a late round KO, so 4-5 KO. But that's just my, slow cooking kind of mindset that De Ridder uses when he fights. Yeah, there might be some pushback from Will. Let's see.
No, I agree. I was going to say KO or decision, but I think Brendan Allen's it can get a bit sloppy sometimes. I mean, his KO losses to Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland, they're 2 names that you probably wouldn't expect anyone to get KO'd by. So that's fair enough. But yeah, in terms of like the underdog angle on Brendan Allen, I think he's at plus 125, plus 130 at the moment, at the time of recording.
No, he's plus 170. We showed it on screen. It's here.
Damn, has he moved to plus 170? Wow, my memory is out of date.
Yeah,
that's a lot of movement.
He's plus 1. You can get him as good as plus 173, and the line seems to be moving against him right now. So yeah, I think he might end up like plus 200, like 2-1.
Okay, that's a good demonstration of why the numbers of betting are far more important than the picks, because I see what your angle on a Brendan Allen underdog. I don't think he should be given, what is that, like 37% chance of winning. I think he deserves more than that, personally.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to bet him in some capacity. I think Brendan Allen is the betting side. I don't think I've seen enough from RDR. It's a hype train. It's ironic. It's super ironic for me as someone who bet on RDR to beat Bo Nickel, and now I'm going to basically bet on RDR against RDR in the same situation. Like this is yeah. I know he's good. I'm not saying that it's given, but I do think that Brendan Allen is definitely a very good underdog to be considering for a bet. And we move on to the co-main, which is a suspicious co-main because I don't think either of these fighters really necessarily deserve this spot. Okay, Kevin Holland maybe, but Mike Malott I don't think has done enough maybe to be a co-mainer. Okay, he did finish Charles Radke. What are you guys' thoughts on this fight, Holland against Malott? Josh, you got a side here?
I reckon Holland's got to chill, man. This dude's fought so many times that you'd think that he has like twins, or a twin, right? Like, I don't know what his body's made out of. Like, if he's just a crackhead, but like, I think that all of this fighting, all of this activeness is not great in terms of just advancing your skill set. And because of that, Malott or whatever, can probably get the win here. I don't know what the odds are, but ultimately, I do think that Holland's just here for the money, and Malott's here to be that hometown crowd king, right? Yeah, what are the odds?
But Mike Malott is a slight favourite at the moment. So he opened as a favourite and he was bet down to -150 with 1.67, and money has come back recently on Holland. So basically, it's a close fight. It's a closely lined fight.
Yeah, but then you got to think about like what advantages Holland brings to the table, and you know the dude's a physical freak when it comes to being at welterweight, 8 inches of reach. He's tall. He's got all of the striking you can imagine a fighter having. He's got the ability to adapt, but not really. He's like a I don't know. He's kind of like someone who goes, "Oh, I'll try this now, stuff it." You know, he just doesn't really fully try to win. He's not really switched on, but when he is, and sometimes he is, right? He looks really, really good. But I just think that after 2 months of him fighting against Rodriguez just a couple of months ago, I reckon he's just here for a paycheck and he's just gonna take the money and go, because this feels like, and this is a bit of a business talk to me, but like this feels like, well, we've got a Canadian guy here who's obviously the next big thing in Canada. Let's give him Holland, you know, just so that we can fill the card up with Canadians. So I don't know. In terms of predictions, I just don't know. Like I reckon, I mean, I got to pick eventually, and I might pick Holland. But I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I'm going to pick Holland here. I don't think Mike Malott is very good. I don't think his wins are very good. And I think Kevin Holland, if he wants to, like you just said, with this huge reach advantage of 8 inches and a height advantage, if he takes the cut seriously and does all the things he's supposed to do, he should win this fight pretty easily. It's just that thing, isn't it? Like everyone's been burned, and so this is a buy low spot for Kevin Holland. You're getting plus money on Kevin Holland. Yes, it's in Canada, but I don't think Kevin Holland cares. He's been everywhere to fight. He's fought in enemy territory many times. He can play spoiler here. I think he might be motivated to win this fight because he knows he kind of let people down with the last fight where he just didn't look good. I guess that's a big concern for me. Why didn't he look good? Like, was the cut affecting him? What do you think, Will? Was the cut affecting Kevin Holland here?
Maybe, probably. Oh God, I have such a tricky relationship with Kevin Holland. For anyone who has ever read any of my Reddit breakdowns, I passionately, for years, every time Kevin Holland fights, my breakdown just turns into a plea of not to bet on him at like big favorite odds, because he's a clown, man. He does like, I say this all the time. When you're betting on something, you should only ever bet on a market where the people in question are trying to do the thing that you are betting on. Like if you're betting on like horse racing, there is variance in the fact that the horse doesn't know what's going on. And like Kevin Holland is very similar to that in that regard, in that he doesn't like, he's not trying to do what you want him to do, which is win the fight. He just wants to go out there, have fun, and put on a show. And that sometimes can cause him to do things that are suboptimal to the game plan of go and win the fight. We've used the example before, but like he let Stephen Wonderboy Thompson stand up. Like, what are you doing, man? Anyway, it was a long time ago. And I ranted on this for many, many years. And then Kevin Holland fights Daniel Rodriguez. And I go and bet him at like -300, -350, because of course I do. I'm an idiot. And Kevin Holland comes out there, doesn't clown around particularly, but just looks like shit. So, you know, I don't understand how anybody could put their hard-earned money on Kevin Holland. But what would make it easier is a plus number next to your name. And I think you guys have summed it up perfectly, really. Like, you can't talk about Kevin Holland without being really like terrified at the idea of like trusting him. But when he's on, he's a very good fighter. He's got great skills across the board. Welterweight is definitely the division that suits him best. I think that, you know, there's the conversation of him getting ragdolled and having bad takedown defense at middleweight. But so far, I think he's passed that test in terms of welterweight, and that's where this fight takes place. So do you see sort of stylistic advantages for Malott in some areas, in that his wrestling is going to be good enough probably to get Holland down once or twice, I reckon. but I don't know if he can keep him there. Because again, welterweight Holland, decent defensive wrestler and grappler. Malott has very good BJJ, but Kevin Holland has very underrated jiu-jitsu. People knock his wrestling grappling all the time, but his jiu-jitsu is actually quite good. So yeah, Mike Malott also, to echo what you said, Dom, I actually don't really think he's very good. I remember that Mickey Gall fight he had in his debut, and I was like, that guy is going to get KO'd like fuck one day, and I can't believe it hasn't happened yet. I mean, wait, Magny, did Magny sub him? But it wasn't. Yeah, it broke it exactly. But I think that one day he'll get slept, like just having his hands down. Like he's not a very good striker.
Let's make it.
Kevin Holland can very easily make it a weird underdog display where like everyone asks why the hell was Kevin Holland plus money, but it all depends on Kevin Holland, and that's a conundrum, isn't it?
The mercurial Kevin Holland, indeed, and let's manifest. How I think Mike Malott, like you said, I think his best path to victory is the grappling, because we've seen Kevin Holland controlled. I think if this stays on the feet, Kevin Holland should light this guy up. I mean, if he's motivated, if he comes in focused, he could take him out in round one. Josh, do you think this is a decision for Holland, or do you think he can get it done in Canada? Play spoiler.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with what you got there, KO round 2. That's a pretty safe spot, I reckon.
Any objections, Will?
No, none at all. I think the idea of playing Kevin Holland at plus money does appeal to me, but I just don't know if I can do it. But yeah, I think the KO middle makes sense.
How is this not the co-main event? Maybe the order is not correct on topology, but I think this would make a much better co-main. So we've got Manon Fiorot, who just fought for the title against Valentina in a very closely fought affair, which some people thought she won, against Jasmine Jasudavicius, who is on a 5, possibly more, win streak in her division. Let's have a look. Jazz, 8-2 in the UFC, 5-fight win streak, and she lost to Cortez. Actually, I bet on Cortez in that matchup, but she's done really well since then. She's beat the who's who of the division. Is it flyweight division, isn't it? 125. Yeah. So yeah, I am leaning Jazz here, just because I think if she get it to the ground, I think she can have success. But I'm not. It's not a strong lean. And I know I've basically picking all the underdogs so far. So, yeah. What do you guys think about this matchup?
I have no real words, but I am intrigued by what Will has to say. So I'll give it to Will.
Man, 2025 is not the year for me to be the voice of women's MMA. I'm having a bad time with it. But I know what you mean about this one. Potentially should be co-main. I think this is the most interesting and exciting fight on the card. Just from a stylistic perspective, I think that's probably going to get a bunch of people rolling their eyes, but that's genuinely what I think. The betting line really is another one of those fights where it really does dictate how you feel about which side you want to go to, because I think Manon Fiorot is like minus 200 at the moment. And considering this is two women who are deservedly at the top of the division and have done a very good job of being dominant on the come up, it does make you think, it's even worse than that now. She's like minus 230, so you nearly getting plus 200 on Jasmine Jasudavicius. It does make you think, why is it so wide? And the reason for that is the stylistics. Jasmine Jasudavicius is a, 6 out of 10 striker. Maybe that's even generous. Whereas Manon Fiorot is like an 8 out of 10 striker, I would say, maybe a 9 by women's MMA standards. But on the flip side, Jasmine Jasudavicius is like a 9 out of 10 grappler, and Manon Fiorot, we don't really know. Bars. Basically, Fiorot has got such good takedown defense that we've barely seen her on the mat. 87% is a high number, and to be fair, that stat's a bit padded based off of how she handled Erin Blanchfield in that main event they had a couple of years ago, but it's a weird one. She has consistently shown that the strength that she has in the clinch and just in general, her ability to not get taken down is very, very good. But of course, as is being highlighted on screen right now, Valentina Shevchenko did manage to ground her, and it was the first time we actually saw Fiorot on her back for like a significant minute or two. And I can tell you for a fact, as somebody who had money on Fiorot in that fight, oh boy, did she not look good. So yeah, this fight really does come down to the conversation of, can Jasmine get her to the mat? Because if Jasmine has no issue landing the takedowns, I can tell you now, Jasmine should be like minus 200, minus 300. And the odds are the wrong way around. But if she can't, the odds look fine. And it's just tricky because it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't. A lot of this comes down to like size and physicality, and you're obviously not going to be able to figure that out until you can see them when the fight has started. So, yeah, it's a really tricky one because it's like Jasmine needs to make just one slight improvement to win this fight quite dominantly. But currently, I don't think she has it. But I don't know. It's a very tricky fight. I understand leaning towards Jasudavicius as the underdog. That has to be the way that you're thinking about it from a betting perspective, because betting on Fiorot at like minus 230 when her takedown defense fails her here and she's fucked is a tricky idea. So yeah, I do think that Jasudavicius is the underdog lean, but from a pick perspective, I really don't know.
I do have a bit of a counterpoint when it comes to what Will just said there. I mean, I reckon Fiorot was getting ready for a kickboxing fight against Shevchenko, and that probably led to the takedown. But I do think that when it comes to this fight against Jasudavicius, I feel like she's going to be more takedown defense oriented compared to what she was when she fought Shevchenko. So when it really comes down to this fight, for me personally, I can't see either fighter winning in a very clear manner. I want to go with Fiorot because I've always been a bit of a fan of Fiorot, and Jasmine is getting up there in age. She does have a very one-dimensional style of just grabbing onto her opponents and just mauling them, but can she do that against Fiorot, who's very big, very, very physically capable of, mitigating that positional advantage that Jazz has? I don't know. So yeah, I'm gonna go probably against you two and pick Fiorot here, but since both of you guys have Jazz, I believe I'll just let you guys pick. I am the outlier here, so
Oh, did you pick Jazz? Well, because of course the listeners don't know this, but I fell off the call. So, what was the conclusion of your spiel that Jazz has decided?
I'm really torn. I think that Jasudavicius is basically very good value from a betting perspective, possibly. But I just, if a gun's to my head and I have to pick a winner, I don't know. I guess Fiorot, but I also guess Jasudavicius. I really don't know.
Okay, let's lean with it. This is a picks show, right? So that's why we separate picks from bets, because as someone who's very pedantic, I generally just bet. So if we're picking, let's go with Fiorot. We're going just for the record, I'm going for the underdogs for the first three, but we're picking we have picked Kevin Holland as an underdog, so that's good. So I'm happy about that. Fiorot, I think it's got to be, well, it doesn't have to be a decision. She could potentially, but she doesn't generally, she's not finishing many opponents at the higher level, is she? So it's probably a decision. Oh my god, 5 round, another 5-rounder. Oh, it's 3 rounds. Sorry. Okay.
I was going to say, I hope it's not a 5-rounder. I like my time.
I was getting confused. I've been wondering who that favors. Does that favor Jazz or does it favor Manon? I don't know why I thought it was a 5-rounder.
I thought it was 2. I'm surprised it's not.
I think 3 rounds. So three rounds makes it extremely binary, right? It's like the rounds that Jazz gets the takedowns, if at all, she's going to win. But that does make me feel less confident in Jazz now. I'll still probably bet her. I'm probably going to bet Alan. I'm not sure I'm going to bet Holland, actually, weirdly. We picked him. I'm definitely going to bet Alan and Jazz, but I definitely think that will affect the unit size now, because if it was 5 rounds, I think like 5 rounds, she's going to get her down. And I think that Jazz is much better than Valentina at grappling, like much, much better. So like you see whenever she gets a girl down, she works for position, doesn't she? She's looking to finish. She's looking to do damage. And I think
Yeah.
Manon's quite old as well. That's the other thing. I mean, she's the beast, but she's the old beast now. Isn't she like 36?
Jazz is older, but only by like 9 months.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're both 35, 36, which is pretty crazy.
So Manon is 35 and Jazz is also... Jazz is 36. Okay. Yeah. I think I'm happy to go with Fiorot decision. Should we move on?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's a solid take on it. I think that would be not a bad bet, probably. We've got Marlon Vera against Aiemann Zahabi. Who wants to kick us off here?
I got some take.
Okay, go on.
I'll claim it. All right. So the streak of underdogs, if that's to continue, I would like to put forward the case of Mr. Marlon Vera. I rewatched the Aiemann Zahabi versus Jose Aldo fight a couple of days ago, and it got me thinking, how does Marlon Vera fit into the equation here? And I actually think that if we get anything similar to Zahabi versus Aldo, that Marlon Vera should probably like win that fight, in my opinion. So Marlon Vera is unfortunately a fighter who is kind of like, the story is pretty well written on his abilities and deficiencies. So the most important one is that he is a slow starter. He consistently loses round one. I don't know why. It doesn't really feel like a sort of downloading of information kind of thing. He just continues to very frequently let his opponent have the first round. And that's why Marlon managed to have as much success as he has had in his UFC career, because, you know, he was finishing guys on the prelims, because he's also a very dangerous guy from both a striking and grappling perspective. But then when he got to the main event spots, it then opened up 5 rounds for him. So his biggest weakness didn't become a problem anymore. You know, it's kind of similar to how we say with Merab. Like, Merab was a decent fighter, but then when he got to the championship level and got 5 rounds in him, he became elite because he got an extra 2 rounds to weaponize what he's good at. And Marlon Vera is kind of the same. He's got good cardio, but he's somebody who needs probably more time to really get that going. And another thing that Marlon Vera does really well is hit hard. He lands knockdowns. You know, there's 3 knockdowns in back-to-back fights against Rob Font and Dominic Cruz. It's pretty crazy. It's a good way to win a round, is landing a strike on your opponent that knocks them down. I mean, look at that. Look at the stats on that Marlon Vera versus Rob Font fight. He's almost outstruck 2-1 across 25 minutes, but he wins rounds because he lands knockdowns. It's crazy. So yeah, obviously sheer dangerousness on the side of Marlon Vera, dangerousness that kind of supersedes actual kind of minute winning abilities. So you basically need Marlon Vera to land things that are significant if he's going to win a fight at this level against Aiemann Zahabi. But on the Zahabi side, a tricky fighter, because I remember a time where he was the worst fighter in the UFC. There really was a time when he was the worst fighter in the UFC, around like Fight Island COVID times. He was a laughingstock. Like, look at he lost to Vince Morales by unanimous decision. You know, yes, he beat Draco Rodriguez, but he was a massive dog in that fight against Draco Rodriguez. Who the fuck is Draco Rodriguez? Anyway, his evolution and the way that he's like put it all together is insane, and it is genuinely one of the biggest like turnarounds I've ever seen in MMA. It's absolutely mad. But yeah, I mean, there's the Jose Aldo fight. I don't know how I scored that one, but I think it was very, very close. And whilst Jose Aldo is still competing at a very like a high enough level, Zahabi didn't show the best fight IQ there. Like, I think he in that 3rd round he really did let a Jose into a fight. I can't remember how I'd scored it after 2 rounds, so maybe he needed to. But the fight turned into a chaotic brawl in round 3, basically. And you know who loves a chaotic brawl in round 3? Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera is a fighter who makes up for the lost time of being 1 round down. So basically, my sort of projection for this fight is I think Aiemann Zahabi wins the first. The second is a coin toss, but I think Marlon Vera wins the third with a lot of damage and finishing upside. I think that this is basically going to come down to the second round, in my opinion. And, you know, coin toss of a fight. Do you back the minute winning ability of Aiemann Zahabi or the sort of chaoticness and high variance of Marlon Vera? Because Marlon Vera is also incredibly durable. So I don't think Aiemann Zahabi has much of a chance of finishing him, whereas on the reverse, it's certainly possible. So, yeah, sorry, lots of thoughts there, not a lot of coherence. But in terms of the betting line, if we could very quickly jump onto fight odds, everything I've just explained, to me, that sounds like a 50-50. Marlon Vera is currently around plus 145, which is not a 50-50. That is, plus 145 is like 41% probability, whereas I think it's 50-50. So as far as I'm concerned, I think Marlon Vera is a interesting bet from an underdog perspective this week. I will be probably placing a bet on that myself for a small amount because Marlon Vera is not particularly trustworthy, but I think he has all the finishing upside. And I think from a scorecards perspective, he probably wins at least one. I think he could easily win two. So I don't really understand why he's the dog. I have him as a slight favorite personally. What do you guys think?
I'm relatively conflicted about this fight, and I think this is going to be a recurring theme for me throughout this whole event because when it comes to close fights that, well, what we expect to be close fights, I feel like it's important to talk about the judges as well, right? I mean, there's always going to be some sort of sketchy result, and I don't know what the history of scorecards are like in Canada. I completely forget about all that stuff. But if this is going to be a close one, as you think it might be, Will, I feel like Zahabi might be able to get a split win out of this. I just don't know. Like when I first saw this fight on Topology a couple of days ago, I was like, Vera should win. Clearly, I mean, there should be a case in which Vera just blasts Zahabi in the face and gets that knockdown or knockout. And then you look at Zahabi's growth as a fighter recently, and yeah, he just evolved out of nowhere. And now that he's fighting Vera, who does lose that first round, Vera's going to play catch up. Maybe Zahabi's going to keep that catch up play away from him. Like who knows? I got no real pick here. I could flip a coin. I could tell, roll a die, for example. I don't know, but this is such a tricky fight to predict. Yeah, I got nothing else here. What about you, Don?
I think you're right, Josh. I think it's a pretty much a coin flip. I do think that the one thing you said, Will, about the Aldo fight is not quite right, is that actually Zahabi came on very, very strong in the third round. He got knocked down, and he showed a lot of heart to rally from the knockdown and end up on top of Aldo. Basically, Aldo gassed in that one, so it kind of helped, I guess, that he was raining down elbows trying to finish him at the end of the fight, and the judges gave the first round to Aldo, who basically had a huge power advantage over Zahabi. I mean, Zahabi, you can see in his frame and his build, he's more of a sort of volume tactical striker. I don't really know how I feel about this fight because I haven't given it a great deal of thought. I backed Zahabi there. Like, I picked him on the podcast as a plus 200 underdog. So obviously, I'm fond of him, shall we say. But in this one, I can definitely see the Marlon Vera angle. I think the one counterpoint, in addition to the fact that I don't think this is necessarily a round three for Vera, if Zahabi can somehow manage his gas tank, well, we've seen that he can come on strong. If anything, I think Zahabi is an equally slow starter, so I think this is going to be very boring first round. I think it's a close fight, so I can see the underdog angle, but the counterpoint really was momentum, right? So, momentum, I don't know how much stock to really put in that, but Vera's obviously had a tough time of it lately. I think the only thing you can say about having 3 out of 5 losses, even though they're to really, really good fighters. I mean, Sandhagen, O'Malley, Figueiredo, you're getting a buy low spot here with Vera for sure. It's just what's that done for his confidence? Whereas the flip side, right, with Zahabi, who maybe not as good a fighter as Vera, or maybe a similar level of fighter, but he's riding a 6-fight win streak. And he has beaten good fighters, Basharat, Munoz, Aldo. It's not like he's fighting bums. So I think they're on a similar level, and I think it's a close fight. And yeah, I certainly wouldn't begrudge anyone to take the underdog in this situation. Like Josh said, I think it probably is a decision fight, and in that situation, you do have to be a little bit wary about the judging. So yeah, I don't really have a side on this one. I guess Will's made a good case for Vera, so I'm happy to to take him as the pick. Are you happy with that, Josh? Well, I guess we've got two of us on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of just gonna let you guys take control of this one. So yeah.
No, I'm on the fence with you. So I think that's really Will's taking control of it. And so, Will, how do you think Vera will get this done?
Yeah, we'll say decision.
Yeah,
I do think he could. Yeah, I think it's just interesting. If you think that Zahabi is a slow starter, I think that makes me even more confident in Vera. I think Vera wins the third round. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if these two guys are fighting in a single round at their optimum, so apparently that is round 3 for both of them, I just think Vera's better. I think if it goes to a brawl, which is how we expect it to late on, I think Vera wins that. So yeah,
well, you've got +1 in him, so I mean that's the main thing. I think the problem you have with Vera is you haven't seen him fight well for a long time. He looked so out of sorts. He looked really out of sorts. I just find it hard to back a fighter who looks like they don't. Something's missing. You know, everyone's saying it was the life beating he took from O'Malley, like 400 strikes or whatever. Like, he just looks so tentative. You know, I think which fight was it where people were expecting him to come out a bit more. You know, let me see. There was a fight. Was it the Figueiredo fight? Probably
yeah.
That's the one. And they were expecting him. I think he was the favourite here. Do we know that? Let's have a look. They usually can see the historical odds. I'll find the historical. I'm pretty sure he was the favourite against Big Figgy.
I think he was the dog. Was it a pick'em? I don't know.
I think
he was the plus next to it.
Yeah, it was pick'em. He was +115. But I know a lot of people were on him. And yeah, that was a disappointing performance from him. He didn't look like his head was in the game. You know, like, I think you're absolutely right. If this is a 5-round fight, I mean, it's Vera all day long. Like, he's going to wear Zahabi down in rounds 4 and 5. I think it's close. And for that reason, I think it's fine pick to take Vera and bet on him at plus money. But I don't know, like, yeah, it's in Canada, so could it go to split decision? Split decision might be a good bet. But yeah, I think it's good. It's good that you've represented the other dogs. So we've got a couple now out of the first 4. We took Holland and Vera. Now we're on to Frevola versus Carl Nelson. Carl Nelson being the home fighter here. I already bet on Frevola, so I might as well come out and say it. I think he's got a similar UFC record to Carl Nelson. I think Frevola is 5 and 5, while Carl Nelson is 4 and 5. And I think that Frevola's just fought a much higher level of competition, so the record's a little bit misleading. Frevola's lost to Fares Ziam, Benoit Saint-Denis, but then he was on a 3-fight win streak before that. Then he lost to Sarukian and McKinney in round 1. Before that, he beat Jalen Turner and Luis Pena. We look at Carl Nelson. Who's he fought? He lost to Steve Garcia. There's no shame in that, although he missed weight for that. Maybe it was short notice, if I remember correctly. His wins aren't bad, actually. Algeo is a good win. I think that was definitely, he was an underdog for that. Beat Padilla and Builder. I don't know who Blake Builder is. He lost to Jai Herbert and Billy Quarantillo. Those aren't too bad, actually. Beat Paulo Reyes. Lost to Matt Sales and Diego Ferreira. Yeah, what do you guys think about this fight?
Do the Canadians know that Carl Nelson's Canadian? Like, I know that sounds really, really weird to say, but whenever I look at him, I always think Denmark or, somewhere in the Nordic region. But when it comes to this fight, I really can't give it enough shit. I see it very binary. Matt Frevola, his nickname should just be called the Roller because he's lost all his steam. He's no longer that much of a threat against the higher level fighters. And whilst Nelson isn't exactly a high level fighter, I do think that Nelson at least has that experience against those higher level competitions compared to Frevola, who is a bit of a disposable rocket launcher. You fire him once and he's off to explode, and that's it. You just chuck him away, right? Like, he's not really a better's fighter, really. He can win by KO. I might put like an alt bet there for him to win by KO, because that's always not a chance for him to accomplish that. But for Nelson, he's just a more well-rounded fighter, and I feel like, yeah, it's a weird one, really. I'm personally going to pick Carl Nelson here only because Frevola is a bit of a billboard fighter, right? We know what to expect. He's very readable with his attacks, But then Nelson is who is he? I reckon most of the people that are attending this fight live in the arena are like gonna Wikipedia page his whole face and be like, who's this guy, But yeah, I don't know. I can't make a pick here.
Okay. We're 1-1. You go Nelson, I'm going Frevola. So will you get the deciding vote?
Oh god, the pressure. I hate this fight. I hate Carl Nelson. Fuck Carl Nelson. I think on a very old episode, we posed the question in a fireside chat of which fighter is like our betting nemesis, and Kyle Nelson was mine. So basically, whatever I choose, whatever I pick, whatever I tip, just do the opposite, and you'll win money. That's how it works. Yeah, my view on this fight is it's going to be close. I think Matt Frevola is the better minute winner. He's technically better. He's more well-rounded. He has more tools and more paths to victory. But Kyle Nelson has the whole right hand go brr thing, and so can just turn the tide of the fight with one punch, which he's liable to do occasionally. So I would lean towards Matt Frevola because I am somebody who just always tries to fade the KO narrative, but buyer beware. But also from a betting perspective, I know Josh likes his alt bets. The Carl Nelson by KO is probably going to be the nicest looking number from a betting perspective, I imagine. I don't know if I'll do it myself, but pay attention to whether or not I bet it, because if I bet it, it's not going to land. I'll tell you that. But yeah, Matt Frevola is probably my pick, which I feel bad at, Dom, because I know you've bet him. So I've just given your bet the kiss of death. So I apologize.
That's okay. I didn't put much on it. I just thought it was interesting. I think that this potentially could get wider. Yeah, I think Matt Frevola is the better all-round fighter. I think from what I've seen of Carl Nelson, he's overperformed, whereas I think Matt Frevola has underperformed. So I think it's kind of a bit of a buy low for Frevola, who's on a 2-fight skid. I really think it's a bit like Vera, I guess, in a sense. But with Vera, you got plus money, so maybe that's maybe steering me more towards Vera. But there's no shame in losing to Fares Ziam and Benoit Saint-Denis. Before that, he was on a tear. So yeah, I think it's a buy low spot. I think Frevola's going to steamroll it. Carl Nelson, give me the KO. But I think you guys, maybe decision's the safer option. What do you think?
If I was to pick Frevola, I reckon KO. That's my lean for that one.
Me too, actually. Yeah, I'm on that as well.
He has got that round 1 KO of Adoba, so let's hope it happens.
Yeah, he does hit like Loki really hard.
And then, in the interest of time, we'll stay on the pick page. Who wants to give us some insights to the Renegade versus the Mongolian Murderer, Cody Gibson versus Aori Qileng?
I am shocked that this fight is on the main card. I feel like this fight belongs as an opener for the Dana White Contender Series, and yeah.
How is this fight down here? Like what's that?
Yeah, exactly. Fuck.
That is a banger. I mean, that is a brilliant fight. I've actually bet on Jourdain. It's even money at the moment. It's even money. It's not moving. Yeah, I just think, we weren't breaking this one down, so let's leave that for the bets. Right, let's stay focused. So yeah, I think Josh was talking about this.
Yeah, I was, but the more I talk about it, the more I just can't care. I don't know. I really don't. This feels like a weird fight to make. Yeah, Will, how about you? What do you think?
Just pass the responsibility over. That's fair. Yeah, I have no strong opinions here. It's a case of like one guy being the more vulnerable but the better fighter, if that makes sense. Kind of similar to Carl Nelson versus Matt Frevola, really. I think that Cody Gibson has shown more in his UFC time. He has also lost two respectable names like Damon Blackshear, Miles Johns, and Brad Katona. I don't know how respectable those names are, but they're UFC quality, aren't they? I think we can agree on that. Those three are all like competent enough. Whereas when you look at the wins of Qileng, you've got Johnny Munoz Jr., Cameron Else, Jay Perrin. And I think we can all agree that those are three names that are not UFC quality. So that's a very wiki capping perspective. But like Cody Gibson has a lot more about him, I think. He's probably the more dangerous fighter. And Qileng sometimes can be very frustrating in that he just can be low volume sometimes, just stands there and stares at his opponent. I'd say it's a pick your poison kind of thing. It's like, do you want to bet on the guy who's an inferior martial artist, or do you want to bet on the guy who is defensively frail? I'd rather just bet on neither personally, but in the interest of a pick, I would have said that Gibson should be the favorite because Qileng is not the most prolific finisher, and if he doesn't finish Gibson, I assume he loses. So I will say Gibson.
Yeah, I might take that as well. Yeah,
I'm 100% aligned. Actually, I think that this might be. I know it sounds horrendous, but this might be a good betting spot, to be honest, because it's even money, and I think Gibson has all the grappling upside here. I think he's a decent striker as well. Gibson, he does get hit. That's the concern. There is sort of KO or bust angle for Qileng, but I really think. I think Gibson could time up in knots on the ground. Need to look into it a bit more, do a bit of tape study on Qileng. And I think Gibson could win a decision or a submission, maybe even ground and pound finish. I think everything's on the table for Gibson. I think he's the side. I don't know why the line is so close. I think this is potentially interesting. I guess you'll have to wait and see if anyone bets it when we come back in a week's time. But just to round this up, are we going for decision, or do you think we can get a sub? Has Qileng been subbed? Let's take a look. Does he have a history of? He definitely not very good on the mat. I remember that.
Don't think he's very good on the feet either.
Not very good anywhere. Yeah, he doesn't generally get subbed. He gets KO'd. He's been subbed.
He's a good actor though. That fucking Daniel Marcos. Oh my god, I bet Daniel Marcos like -150, and I think it ended like -250 or something. It was like the best bet ever, and then he beat the shit out of him, and then he fucking weaseled his way out to a no contest in round 2 when it was so obvious he'd lost.
Well, we went for the decision in the end because I just submitted it, so we can always go back and check it.
Yeah,
but I think it's going to be very interesting. I think this is a much better card for betting. Just going through this with you guys, I think that we're going to have some interesting bets for next week. So I hope that everyone tunes in for those, because we've we've given good arguments for all the underdogs, haven't we? So I think there wasn't, except for maybe Frevola, there wasn't many fights where we felt super confident on the favourite. Not that we're super confident in Frevola, but Josh, I know that if I ask you what you're going to say, you're going to say we've got Discord, we've got a Twitter, and those will be in the comments below the video. We've broken down Vancouver card for you, and like I said, we're back in a week with our bets. Guys, anything else to say?
No, not really. I mean, like, expect chaos, expect action, and expect perhaps the crowds to fall over the rails again when Mike Malott walks out, because that was a fun moment, wasn't it?
I missed that. I'll definitely watch him for that now. Disappointed if it doesn't happen.
Oh dear, I just didn't think you were going to say that.